Welcome on back, everybody, or in if this is your first time. This is the All Aussie Rules Footy Podcast. This is episode 53. This is our round 24 review. Just fix this light up. It is the end of the home and away season. We've reached the end. All the final positions are locked and loaded. The top 8 sorted. The matchups are sorted. We don't officially have the scheduling yet for what games are at what time. We've got a leak that might be true, might not be, but crazy to think. We've reached the end of the home and away season. We were left on the edge of our seats all the way up until the final 5 or so minutes of the final game to see who would take the last spot in the finals. But it's all decided. Before we jump into that, though, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. 2 podcast episodes every week, Mondays and Fridays. That will continue up until at least the end of the AFL men's season. I will be chucking in some AFLW content as well, so that might continue all the way through to the end of their season. We'll see how that plays out. So 2 podcasts every week. One on you. Well, they both go live on YouTube and Spotify Mondays and Fridays. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Also on the YouTube, there will be plenty of content coming out over the next 4 weeks. It's award season. There'll be videos on all of the awards nights, both before and after them. And we will also be doing a end of season wrap for every team. So as each team gets knocked out, we'll be doing a video for them. So there's already 10 that I have to lock and load over the next couple of weeks for the 10 teams that are officially done for season 2024. Also, don't forget to check out all the social medias: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Plenty of content over at all of them, so go check it out. Without any further ado, let's have a look at... We're going to start with the finals matchups. I'm sure everybody probably is aware of who's playing who, but let's have a look at that first before we jump into the 9 matches from round 24. And there it is, locked and loaded. Qualifying final number 1 is a Sydney derby, which is huge for the New South Wales population and footy supporting community. Both the teams, top 4, are playing each other. One of them is going to be hosting a prelim final, so we will be definitely having a prelim final in the state of New South Wales. And there's no reason to think that we can't see an all New South Wales grand final, but we will see what happens, I guess, over the next 4 or 5 weeks. The other qualifying final down the bottom is Port Adelaide hosting Geelong. Massive game for both clubs. Port Adelaide obviously have not had the best success over recent years in finals. They end up second on the ladder, clear by a game. So this is their opportunity to prove it all wrong. It was not that long ago people were calling for Ken Hinkley's head, and here he is, led them to second on the ladder. A home prelim against Geelong, which I'm hearing rumblings of a Thursday night fixture, but that could be completely wrong. The first elimination final is up at the Gabba. Brisbane Carlton, rematch of last year's prelim final. Carlton will probably be getting some players back. They snuck into finals after losing against St Kilda this week. They did their best to miss the finals, but they held on and they get a chance for redemption. While they're not playing probably good enough over the last little bit, getting some players back, you can't write them off. And then the final elimination final is a huge one. MCG, Bulldogs Hawthorn. Probably not the team that the Bulldogs would have wanted to go up against in finals week 1, but to be the best, you got to beat them all. So we'll see what happens in that one, but potentially an absolute cracker on whenever that is. Potentially Friday night. If it is a Friday night, it'll be Hawthorn's first Friday night game of the year. And if it's a night game, it'll be just their second night match of the season, which is insanity. But we'll see what happens. That's the 4 matchups. They are the 8 teams remaining, pushing towards that Premiership Cup towards the end of September. Without any further ado, though, let's jump into the matches from the weekend. We led off with a dead rubber, which was Melbourne Collingwood, was at the MCG. And to be honest, Collingwood kind of looked in control of this one pretty much the whole way through. It was a interesting night. The Storms hit. It absolutely bucketed down throughout the second half. They even had a bit of lightning and a lightning break of about 35 minutes where they went off into the change rooms and just wasted a bit more time before the seasons ended for both teams. But in the end, Collingwood won comfortably by 46 points. And yeah, that's about all there is to say about it. They were just a much better team. It was probably Melbourne's one of their worst performances of the year. Number-wise, they just showed nothing. Meanwhile, it was probably more like the Collingwood game that they would have been liking to show throughout the rest of the year, but they just haven't been able to do it. Some interesting numbers, I guess, on Collingwood's side of the fence. They won the inside 50s by plus 12, which they haven't been good at inside 50 count most of the back half of this season especially. They were good in clearances, which they're not terrible at clearances, and they are the better team out of these two in clearances, so not surprising there. Contested footy, they won that again, so that's 2 out of about... they've won the contested footy a few times late in the season. Uncontested footy, they went plus 95 when typically they get smacked in that area, so they were able to control the loose ball, and that just kind of summed up this game. They did lose the tackle count by 1, but that's not too bad, and they dominated the turnover intercept game, which up until the bye they were really good in that area, and then it just completely disappeared out of their game for 5-6 weeks. But the last couple of weeks they've brought it back a little bit, so a little bit too late for them, but they certainly showed signs that they are still got the potential going into next year. Looking at some of the players, it was a Dacos party really. Both Dacos brothers had 40 touches each. Nick Dacos also kicked a couple goals. He was probably best on ground. You'd imagine he'll get the 3 votes granted. I think that was pretty much Collingwood's aim for the night, was just give Nick Dacos the ball as much as they can. When you don't have much else to play for, why not? They still won the game, so it's not like it hurt their chances in the game because they absolutely smacked them. Lipinski probably played one of, if not his best games of the year. He had 30 touches and a couple goals as well. Ed Allen, in just one of his first few games of his career, he was really good in the middle. He had 21 touches, kicked a good goal, was really good. John Noble was good. Melbourne's best was probably Pickett. He was everywhere, certainly in the first half, keeping them in the game. I believe he's been offered 3 weeks for a head-high bump on Darcy Moore. It's certainly an area of his game that he probably needs to think about, because too many times he's going for the body and he gets head. At some point you've got to adjust the way you play, I guess, but we'll see if that ever sinks in for him. That is Friday Night Footy. It was a dead rubber. One team turned up, one team certainly didn't. Game number 2 wasn't officially game number 2 of the weekend because of the fixture changes on Saturday. If you weren't aware, the Hawthorn North Melbourne game was brought forward, but we're going to do them in the order that they were meant to be, just because that's the order that I have them in my documents. Geelong West Coast, it was at GMHBA Stadium, and Geelong absolutely destroyed the Eagles. Eagles obviously had nothing to play for. I was a little bit worried that this is what we were going to see happen. Sorry about my camera. I'm filming this pretty late, so it's obviously not enjoying life. But anyway, I was worried that this was going to be an absolute blowout, and it certainly was. Halftime lead of 100 points for Geelong. In the end, second half, West Coast actually showed something. They won the second half. They still lost by 93 points, but their second half was a lot better. What else is there to say about this game? It was just cruise control in the second half. wasn't overly exciting. Geelong did what they needed to do to give themselves a chance at a home final. It didn't happen because Port Adelaide obviously won later on in the weekend, but it's not the end of the world for them. They played well. They got themselves in a little bit of good touch going into finals, and we'll see where that takes them. Obviously, they dominated uncontested footy, and yeah, they pretty much just did what they needed to. Absolutely demolished the first half, and then just cruise controlled at home. Best players, Jeremy Cameron, he kicked 9 goals. I think he had 7 at half time and was looking like he was pushing towards trying to push for that Coleman medal. He would have needed a lot more, another 10 or so in the second half, but didn't manage that, but ended up with 9 goals, which was a fantastic return for him. Just pretty much Geelong domination. When you look down the board, pretty much top probably 6 players on the ground were all Geelong, and maybe even further. Ollie Henry kicked 4 goals for. He was pretty solid up forward too. He had a good first half, but overall it was just one-way traffic pretty much the whole way through this game. I can't think of anyone else that really needs noting as dominant in this game. Everyone kind of played their role. Jack Henry did good down back, as was pretty much the whole Geelong defence really, certainly in the first half. They just cruised to an easy victory, and they'll take that confidence into the finals maybe. Next up, we'll look at Richmond Gold Coast. This was kind of a dead rubber. While technically Richmond could have got off the wooden spoon if they had have won this one, they probably would have jumped North Melbourne based on the fact that we'll get to North Melbourne in a minute, but they got absolutely demolished. But yeah, it was a game that Gold Coast kind of controlled the whole way after not winning a home game in their first 9 or 10 away game. Didn't win an away game in their first 9 or 10 attempts. They end up winning the last 2 to the Suns, both in Melbourne, one against the Bombers and one against the Tigers. Ended up 28 points, pretty comfortable if we're being honest. They never really looked in danger, certainly from early in the second quarter onwards. They kind of controlled the game. They were much better forward. Once they got the ball forward, they were really good. Richmond kind of controlled clearance game and inside 50s and contested footy, uncontested footy, all these areas the Tigers were really good at, but they just couldn't convert it into shots. And in the end, Gold Coast were the exact opposite. They really did well at converting their opportunities and making the Tigers pay, and I guess that's just kind of the difference between these two teams at the moment. And where they're both at. Interestingly, Gold Coast was the younger team here, less experienced team, but it was just Richmond unable to really convert their opportunities. Best players, Sam Flanders, probably best on, I would say, 29 touches, 14 of them contested. 6 intercepts, 6 clearances, 4 shots for 2 goals, 14 score involvements is a really high number. Their whole midfield was good, as typically is when they're winning. Flanders, Anderson, Rao were all really good. Miller was probably, he had 31 touches. He was still solid as well. So, overall, just a comfortable Gold Coast win, I guess, is all you can say for it. Richmond, they played all right. They did okay at times, but in the end, they just lacked that finishing class that was, I guess, required for them to win this one and get off the bottom of the ladder. Whether they wanted to win or not is a different story, but they certainly didn't manage it here. Next up, we have one of the biggest shellackings you will see in football. It was Hawthorn North Melbourne. It was down in Launceston at Utah Stadium on Saturday afternoon. It was meant to be the 4:40 game. It was moved forward to 12:30 to avoid using the lights, and then it ended up being dark and gloomy and rainy, so they had the lights on anyway. But in the end, Hawthorn won it by 126 points. They controlled this match from start to finish. Granted, the last quarter was an absolute schmozzle for North Melbourne. Hawthorn by far were the better team. Three-quarter time, they were only 66 points up, and while it looked like, they might win by close to 100, that final quarter was just one-way traffic. You look through the stats, and it's just a huge discrepancy. 21 difference in inside 50s, 24 difference in clearances. Centre clearances, stoppage clearances dominated Hawthorn's way. Contested footy, uncontested footy, intercept game, just everything was just one-way traffic in the way of Hawthorn. And they kicked 10 goals 4 to 1 goal straight in that last quarter to end up absolutely piling it on. Ended up 26 goals 14, 170 to outscore Geelong by 2 points in the two highest scoring teams of the weekend. And North Melbourne didn't even put up a little bit of a bark in that last quarter. They just rolled over and died. Granted, they didn't have anything to play for. Players are clearly mentally knocked off at three-quarter time. Joy Simpkin was the only one, pardon me, that showed a lot of heart in that game. Tristan Xerri as well, actually. Sorry, he was really good. But outside of those two, the rest of their team looked quite bad. Meanwhile, for Hawthorn, pretty much everyone was just really, really good. They had a lot of the ball, as you can see. They dominated contested and uncontested footy. They obviously scored a lot. They kicked 26 goals. 4 to Dylan Moore, 3 to Nick Watson, 3 to Scholl, 3 to McDonald, 2 to Deer, 2 to Sicily, 2 to Bruce, 2 to Ginnivan, 2 to D'Ambrosio, who was potentially one of the best players on the ground. He had 31 touches, 2 goals. He was really good. Jai Newcomb has had an exceptional second half of the season. I don't think his first half of the season will allow him to be anywhere near Brownlow hope, but I would imagine we'll see him poll quite well towards the end of the year. He had, 35 touches, 1 goal, 4 goal assist, 15 score involvements. Just an outstanding performance from him. But in the end, it was just a Hawthorn domination. How far can they go? They've got a big game coming up against the Bulldogs, who are also in very good form. But you got to start to think this Hawthorn team is a chance. Granted, a lot of their wins, they've beaten some decent teams recently, so we can't write that off as, they're only beating bad teams. They've beaten Carlton a couple of weeks ago, who aren't playing the best. They beat Collingwood only 5 or so weeks ago. Pardon me. But overall, Hawthorn just really, really good in this one. We move on to Saturday night football, and it's Brisbane, the Bombers. Brisbane were pretty much locked into 5th spot if they won this one. And they got the job done pretty comfortably, although they shot very poorly in front of goal. Back to kind of what they were doing early season, where they were really, costing themselves games with poor kicking. This one didn't end up biting them, but it may well do if they try this in finals. If they play like that in the finals, they will certainly cost themselves a win. They end up winning by 20 points, kicking 11 goals, 21-87. They were comfortably in front, as you can see, at three-quarter time by 46 points. And then the Bombers kicked 5 goals to 0 goals 4 in that last quarter to make it look a little bit more respectable, but Brisbane certainly won't want to be kicking that poorly in front of goal going forward. They dominated inside 50s, which is a way that they play most weeks, but the Bombers are also a very ground-dominating team, but they weren't in this one. Clearances dominated by Brisbane. Contested footy absolutely dominated by Brisbane. Essendon just did not show up in the contest in this one. Uncontested footy did go the way of the Bombers, but they tend to play that way. Tackling went the way of the Bombers as well, but once again, Brisbane are the lowest ranked team in terms of tackle differential in the AFL, so not that surprising. And turnover game was won by Essendon, but that's because Brisbane were getting their hands on the ball first in the clearance all the time, pretty much. Best players, Lachie Neale, he's finished the season outstanding. He's going to get more votes here, you'd imagine. Does he get the 3? Is it going to be enough for him to get the Brownlow? I think he's been better this year than last year, if I'm being honest. I didn't think he was probably good enough to win the Brownlow last year, but he did. I think he's been better this year, so we'll see what that means on a Brownlow night. But he's had 40 touches here, 11 score involvements, 1 goal, 2 goal assists. He's done everything, as he does every week. He's an outstanding player. Lot of big ball winners, a lot of good players. Zach Merritt had 37 touches. He might get into the votes in this one. He's probably going to be up in the top 3 also around the halfway mark of the year in the Brownlow, but I just don't think his back half of the season has been good enough. And Essendon just have not been winning enough games towards the end of the year. Will Ashcroft, he's really starting to get going now. Obviously had a delayed start to the season, and then once he started playing, he was a little bit slow to get going in his first couple games, which is completely understandable, but he's really hitting his straps now. He had 30 touches, he was really good. Goal kickers, Charlie Cameron kicked 3, which is good for him because he hasn't been in the best form this year. He hasn't had the greatest season. Lohman's been great. He kicked 3. Langford kicked 3 for the Dons, and Stringer kicked 2. But yeah, in the end, could have been a lot worse for the Dons if the Lions had a kick straight. They just kicked a lot of points. They certainly had plenty of shots, and in the end, they got away with it, I guess. If you look at the total shot count, Brisbane 31, Essendon 19, so 12 extra shots for only a 20-point win. But Brisbane, they get a host Carlton up at the Gabba now in 2 weeks, which will be an interesting game to say the least. Carlton did go up to the Gabba in opening round and beat Brisbane, so we'll see how that plays out. The other Saturday night game was Sydney-Adelaide. This one was at the SCG. Sydney pretty much had a top spot already locked going into this game with just their percentage advantage on Port Adelaide. And turned out they won the game, so it didn't matter. Wasn't the most convincing win of all time, but once again, kind of like the Brisbane game, 3/4 time, they were pretty much home and hosed, 49 points up. Just drifted into a nothing last quarter, where Adelaide came back a little bit. Ended up winning by 31 points, did the Swans, and capped off a good season where they win the minor premiership. The back half of the year left a little bit to be desired, no doubt about it, but at the end of the day, they've done enough to finish on top of the ladder. They get the second chance. They host GWS in a home qualifying final. At the end of the day, they would have taken that at the start of the year. They do need to find a little bit more form, but once again, they were missing a key midfielder in this one in Isaac Heaney, was a late out. Looking at this, the stats, the numbers, defensive efficiency for both teams was really poor. That's probably a little bit concerning for Sydney. They'll want to tidy that up going forward. They also gave up more inside 50s, which is not something that they would be too happy about, I don't think. Clearance game, losing clearances to Adelaide is not outstanding. Adelaide are not a great clearance team. Contested footy also went the way of Adelaide, which just kind of suggests that Sydney maybe weren't too fussed about this one and were just more focused on getting through the game. So maybe we don't read too much into the numbers. Chad Warner, he was solid, 22 touches and a goal. Nick Blakey was probably best on ground. He had 32 touches, 2 goals, was really good. It was just Sydney domination, really, in the end. Ben Keys for Adelaide, he's had a tremendous second half of the year. I think he's really showing that he's capable of being up there as one of their best players, and shows potential for Adelaide as a club. I know I had high hopes for them this season, which proved very wrong, but they do have some good talent in their team. Jordan Dawson's been a bit down all year. Isaac Rankin's shown that he has the class to be top 10 player in the AFL. I think Ben Keys has shown that he has a lot of potential to be also a very good player. So there are some positive signs for Adelaide going into next year. The big goal kickers were McDonald and Parker for Sydney, both kicked 3, and then Phil Thorpe and Zach Taylor both kicked 3 for Adelaide. Nothing more to say about that game, really. It was just one-way traffic in the end. Next game up is Bulldogs Giants. It was Sunday afternoon football. Sorry, just hold with me while I find my stats. There it is. This one, it was a windy game at Ballarat. Very windy game. The ball was swinging both ways, well, not both ways, but the way of the wind, obviously. And in the end, Bulldogs' second quarter was really good. They kicked 41, 6 goals, 5 in that second quarter. They kicked most of their goals the one way, to be honest. They kicked 11 of their 14 goals in the way they went in the second quarter. And in the end, they won by 37 points. At three-quarter time, it looked close. But GWS just didn't give much of a fight in that last quarter. It, however, was enough for Jesse Hogan to win the Coleman medal, so congrats to him. His first Coleman medal. He really deserved it this year. I think he ended up on 69 goals, so congrats to him. Nice effort. What to make of this game? Bulldogs dominated it, to be honest. Probably should have won by more. Plus 24 inside 50s, plus 15 clearances, plus 13 contested footy, plus 11 tackles. Like, they played a really good game of football. In the end, kind of like, I think is kind of the way GWS play, is they get beaten in a lot of categories, including shots, but they just stick around games, and this one they couldn't fight it out. Like last week against Brisbane, GWS, I don't think were the better team, but got the win. So in the end, GWS finished top 4, hold on to 4th spot. They get a stay in Sydney. Granted, they have to play Sydney, but they get a stay in Sydney. Big win for the Bulldogs means that they host Hawthorn. Not perfect for them, but we'll see. If they had have lost, it wouldn't have really made much difference. It just would have meant that Hawthorn would have been hosting the Bulldogs instead of the Bulldogs hosting Hawthorn, but it would still be the MCG elimination final. So didn't mean much for the Bulldogs in the end, but it is what it is. Best players in this one could go any way of 18 different players, just about. There was no huge ball winners like Liberatore. Oh no, sorry, I was scrolled down. Bont was official AFL player rating, highest rated player, 22 touches a goal. I mean, he always plays well. Bailey Dale, 27 touches a goal. Ed Richards, 29 touches, 2 goals. Libba, as I was saying, was 24 touches and a goal. So all their midfielders kicked goals, basically, is what we're saying from that. Nobody kicked more than 2 goals on the ground. Norton kicked 2. Jesse Hogan kicked 2, won the Coleman, GG's. Toby Green kicked a couple. Sam Darcy kicked a couple. Cadman kicked 2. Ed Richards kicked 2. Yeah, I don't know if there was anyone that was outstanding. I said there was no big ball winners, but yet there definitely was, because GWS were playing. Lockie Whitfield had 42 touches, and Tom Green had 37, so completely ignore what I said about no big ball winners. Tom Green was pretty fired up in this one at times with some of his opponents, which was interesting. But yeah, doesn't mean much going forward. I think Bulldogs are the better team out of these two, to be honest. I have GWS probably ranked 7 out of 8 teams that are in the finals. Only above Carlton at the moment, in my opinion. But they'll sit in 4th. They get the second chance, and they get to play Sydney week 1. If they win that, they'll be hosting a prelim final, which would be huge for them. They only just missed out on a grand final appearance last year by less than a kick. So going forward, it'll be interesting to see where that sits them. But they were thoroughly dominated in this match. Let's be honest. Second last game of the round, end of the home and away season. Carlton St Kilda. Wowee, was this a roller coaster? If you're a Carlton supporter, credit to you, because this one would have taken a few years off your life today. My goodness. It was close-ish most of the way. St Kilda looked like they were going to be in control of it. Then the last quarter came around. Carlton kicked a couple, got in front. Looked like they'd won it with 6 minutes to go. They took the lead, and then they had a chance to get more than a goals lead. Missed it from a set shot from 20 metres out. Went up the other end. Philippou missed a shot for St Kilda, which would have put them in front. And it looked like Carlton might hold on. And then there was a couple boundary throw-ins. Went forward. Jack Higgins, under pressure, snapped over his shoulder, through the big sticks. Just carried about 10 centimetres over the line before being touched. And St Kilda held on for the final 13 seconds to win it. A really good smother by Zach Jones might have been crucial in stopping Carlton being able to have a shot. Yeah, incredible. Looked like Carlton were knocked out of finals. Fremantle let themselves down. We'll get to them in a minute. But Carlton and Fremantle had a battle towards the end of the year to see who could fall over the most. And in the end, Freo won that matchup and Carlton sneak through to the finals. Looking at some of the stats here, St Kilda were just really good, to be honest. Their forward efficiency was great. Carlton dominated inside 50s, were really good in clearances, controlled uncontested footy. St Kilda won contested footy, which I did note in the preview episode the other day that when Carlton get beaten, it does tend to be because they just get beaten in the contest, and St Kilda really did that here. Even though they still lost clearances, they won contested footy, which goes a long way to winning these games. Carlton tackled well, but in the end, St Kilda just did enough in the end. That's all you have to do, I guess. Highest rated players were all Carlton according to the AFL ratings. Sam Walsh, pardon me, 32 touches, he was good. Pitane kicked a really good goal in the first quarter, he was good. Sard, Paddy Cripps, obviously always good. Was he good enough to get in the votes? My opinion, probably not, but he might sneak in there, depends what the umpires see. George Hewitt was really good, he had 32 touches as well, kicked a goal. Rowan Marshall, is he up in contention for All-Australian? Maybe. I will be doing a video this week of my All-Australian team, so check that one out. We'll be going live early this week. Who else was there? What else was there? Just a really good performance across the board from St Kilda. Didn't have anyone outstanding, but also everybody kind of played their roles in the end. No massive goal kickers. Only 4 people kicked multiple goals. They were Membry, Higgins and Wood for St Kilda, and Blake Acres for Carlton. Obviously, Carlton were missing their 3 tools that tend to play forward, in Curnow, Mackay, and you know who I'm talking about. I know who I'm talking about, but I can't think of his name. But you know who it is anyway. You know who it is, surely. Yeah, anyway. My brain has just completely stopped. One final game of the round, end of the home and away season, and boy, oh boy, Fremantle had their chance to play finals, and they let themselves down. They lost their last 4 games. They've only got themselves to blame. They were in the top 4. They looked home and hosed, and then they just let themselves down. Going into the last quarter, they were right in it. They even kicked, I think, the first goal of the last quarter. They were within a kick at one point, even halfway through the last quarter, and then they just didn't finish the job. Rioli kicked 2 goals in that last 10 minutes. Port Adelaide ended up winning by 20 points and locked themselves in second spot. Really good performance from them. Best players, I mean, a big crucial part of this game was the fact that Hayden Young went off late in the third quarter, didn't play the fourth quarter. He was injured. He was outstanding up until that point. Brayshaw was good. For Port Adelaide, Butters, Wines, they were all good. Horn Francis was really good late. He had some crucial moments. As I said, Willie Rioli kicked 3, Voss 2, Georgiades 2, Horn Francis 2 goals. Goal assist wise, as I said, Hayden Young had 3 goal assists. The numbers, defensive orientated game really. In the end, Port Adelaide did enough though. They had 8 extra inside 50s. They did okay in the clearance game, which against Fremantle is crucial. Contested footy went the way of Fremantle. Actually, uncontested footy went the way of Fremantle as well. But in the end, Port Adelaide were too good. And that wraps up, I guess, all 9 matches of round 24. Wraps up all the matches for the year. The only thing we have left to look at this week is how my tips went. And then we will have a look at what's to come left in the year for all Aussie rules and this podcast and the AFL season, I guess. My tips this week looked like they were going to go well. We fell apart in the last couple, unfortunately. We got the first one, Collingwood. We only went by 7. They ended up winning comfortably. Geelong, they won by 93, so we got that one right. Gold Coast won a little bit more comfortably than by 5 points. Hawthorn absolutely demolished North Melbourne, so we got that one right. Brisbane beat the Bombers. We got it smack on, 20 points. Go us. Sydney didn't quite win by 45. They looked like they were going to at 3/4 time, but fell away a little bit in that last quarter. Bulldogs got the job done over GWS. Then we got this one wrong by a kick, which made the game result wrong. Carlton did not beat St Kilda. And then the final game we also got wrong. Fremantle did not beat Port Adelaide. In my actual tipping, I went 8 of 9 because I did actually swap the Carlton to St Kilda at the last moment. It was about 15 minutes before the game and I swapped my tip and I'm pretty happy that I did. Ends the season on 132 out of 207, so not fantastic, not terrible. Let's hope that we can go 9 of 9 in the finals though. We'll see what we can do. Not the worst tipping of the year. Could have been worse, but a solid performance, 132 out of 207. Hopefully we do better next year, and also AFLW starts this week, so hopefully we can do better in that. Follow along because we will be bringing some AFLW content. It won't be a huge amount, but we will be watching all the games. We will be doing a little preview. So my plan going forward, obviously AFLW starts this weekend, so we will have the next podcast episode, which will be on Friday, will basically just be AFLW content. There'll be a little bit of AFL men's content at the start, and then we'll do all the matches for round 1 of AFLW season. Same with the review episode on Monday. Once again, will just be AFLW before we jump back into men's finals, and then we'll be focused mainly on the men's game, I guess, for finals. I think what my plan at the moment is not official, but we'll probably be doing still the 2 episodes a week. We'll be doing 1 men's and 1 women's game episode each week, just purely because there's only a couple games of finals each week, so we'll probably just do a wrap up and preview all in one go. And meanwhile, the women's, we'll just do one, the exact same, a preview and a wrap up, all in one episode. I think that's the plan going forward for the next 5 weeks. Grand final week will probably be a bit different. We might do an extra episode or whatever. We'll work that out once we get to that point. But up until then, I appreciate you for being here. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify. All the interactions help. I appreciate you for tuning in. This has been the All Aussie Rules podcast. We've made it to the end of the home and away season. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday with some AFLW content. Thanks again. Check out YouTube. Plenty of review episodes going live all over the next couple of weeks. Peace.